Thank you all for joining us today to learn about how we'll implement Vermont's digital empowerment plan. So today is the second quarterly meeting, and it serves as an opportunity for exchanging updates and informing the work to get Vermont connected to the internet. So my name is Brittany Watson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Digital Equity Officer for Vermont Community Broadband Board, or VCBB. So VCBB is the administering entity for two programs. So there's the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, or BEAD program, and the Digital Equity program. So the BEAD work focuses on building out high-speed internet with the goal of all Vermont homes being connected and able to afford internet service plans. The digital equity work focuses on what happens after all Vermont homes get connected. So having the devices, skill set, resources, and safety measures to use the internet safely and meaningfully. So in our time today, we'll complete an overview of the digital empowerment plan, the definition of digital equity, Vermont's vision, and the planning that is in process. And we are really excited to be able to introduce Rural Innovation Strategies, Inc., our recently hired contractor to assist with our research efforts. And we'll have some time for questions, comments, and open discussion. So as we begin, I'm going to ask that everyone put your name, the entity you're involved with, and a share out about digital equity related work that you're involved in or know about in the chat. And so as a reminder, digital equity work that addresses one of our three major barriers to help Vermont access and use internet safely and meaningfully are devices, which includes accessibility and affordability, digital skills and literacy, and tech support and cybersecurity. So I'm going to include that writing in the chat just so folks have that. And then I'm going to share my screen, and I will give a brief presentation on what's been going on, and then I'll pass it over to Alex and Danny. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Here's our agenda. And this I just went over. We have our D overview, VCBB update. Rizzy will present, and we'll have open discussion. And so first, digital equity is defined as the condition in which individuals and communities have the information technology capacity that is needed for full participation in the society and economy of the United States. So Vermont's vision for digital equity is that this work will ensure every individual in Vermont, regardless of identity, community, or economic challenges, has high quality, accessible, affordable technology resources. So we've identified 5 programs or initiatives to implement over the next 5 years to increase access to technology resources. So in year 1, which is our current year, we're focusing on research and outreach. So we acknowledged in our digital equity plan that in developing the plan, we encountered limitations in the quantitative data, available to understand the baseline of digital inequities at the state level, particularly for certain covered populations. So this year we'll focus on establishing the partnerships and the capacity necessary for data collections, tracking, and analysis. In year 2, we'll be launching 3 programs. So a capacity building subgrant program, a device program, and a digital navigator program. In year 3, we will focus on expanding our existing workforce development program to include specific initiatives to increase digital inclusion. Year 4 will focus on evaluation and sustainability planning. And year 5 will focus on transitioning out of and completing work of the VCBB. So we are in process of designing a subgrant opportunities to assist with our implementation efforts. So we hope to have the notice out by the end of May 2025, so next month. So please be on the lookout. So we'll share the opportunities widely. This will include participants that register for our quarterly meetings. And we ask that you and everyone that we share with the opportunities with that you share widely within your network as well. So we're modifying our DE plan goals and our measurable objectives. So I anticipate we'll have the updated information to share out at our next quarterly meeting. So this work is really to ensure the proper baseline measurements for our key performance indicators as we're tracking the work over time. So I continue to host monthly listening sessions, and I've been meeting with leaders, members of the public, organizations, and other entities to continue efforts to engage Vermonters throughout this process so that we can meet the needs in getting Vermont connected to digital resources. And so lastly, we have our research efforts. We have at the last quarterly meeting, we talked about how we were in process of hiring a contractor. We have since hired RISI, and I'm really excited to pass it over to them so that they can share more about their project and provide an overview as to the work that's ahead. So I will stop sharing and pass it on to you, Alex. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Brittany. It's been great, by the way, working with Brittany and Yuji in the VCBB team. So big thanks to you for all the work you're doing. I've got a deck that I'm going to just pull up if you give me 30 seconds. All right, there we go. So Rural Innovation Strategies, Inc. is a social enterprise that does broadband-related consulting, research, and technical assistance for public sector entities across the country. And so we're very excited to be supporting the VCBB here in our home state. Just to do some quick introductions, you've got a couple folks on the call that have been working on this project. My name is Alex, as I mentioned. I'm the director of broadband consulting at RISI. I'll just sling it over to Danny and Drew, who can just unmute quickly and say hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danny. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a broadband consultant, and I recently worked on the Vermont 10-year telecom plan, so I'm excited to do more work in Vermont.
Hi, all. Drew Rosebush, the head of the mapping and data analytics team, means I get to head up a bunch of data nerds. So, you know, a lot of fun. Nice to meet you all.
And just to round out, we've got, the organization as a whole has quite a few teams and people in it. I just wanted to call out as well our research team, or a couple folks on our research team who aren't on the call today, but are heavily involved in this project. We've got Dr. Amanda Weinstein and Dr. Adam Dewberry, both of whom do a lot of research on rural areas and the intersection of rural and technology and the internet and digital empowerment and digital equity. So for the presentation today, I'm just going to give a high-level overview of the project, because the project has a lot of different pieces to it. Then we'll dive deeper a little bit into the specific work streams that we're working on, and we'll end with just sharing a timeline of what we're working on all on one page. And I would just invite people to raise their hand and chime in at any point during the presentation if you have questions. So Brittany had this up on her screen already on the left here, which is Vermont's vision for digital empowerment or digital equity. And we're here to support that. So I'm not going to reread what the Vermont's goal is, but as the VCBB has doing this work, One way to frame what we're doing at a very high level is that we're simply providing extra horses to go farther faster. So what I have here is we're providing kind of collaborative research, data collection, and strategic capacity in support of the digital empowerment activities and programs. Now, breaking that down one step further, but staying very high level, in this first year, especially addressing the data limitations that Brittany was talking about, we're working on kind of both a quantitative and qualitative front from a research perspective to try to get the data that they need to design really strategic and really effective programs. So on the quantitative side, we're helping with pulling in additional state and federal data and analyzing it. We are conducting a statistically significant statewide survey, phone-based, right? Not relying on the internet to do a survey about the internet, a phone-based survey. And we're also helping establish, data benchmarks for what's happening in the state and goals for the short term and long term, as well as, how are we going to measure in a statistically significant way our progress. On the qualitative side, we're helping by providing a refresher on emerging best practices that are in research and literature, what's effective, what's been proven to be effective across digital empowerment initiatives. We're doing interviews and focus groups to, again, combine the qualitative with the quantitative and make sure we're hearing the perspectives of individuals and people who are living this every day on the ground. And we're also helping with refreshing an asset inventory of who's doing what across the state in the digital empowerment realm. And so I'm sure that we'll be talking again, various folks on the call that will have things to share on the qualitative side. And then as far as where is this heading, again, this is still at a high level. This isn't a task by task overview yet, but you can think about it in a couple ways, right? First is we want as good of a present day understanding of the digital empowerment needs of Vermonters as possible. So that's across the different focus areas, that's across different covered populations, that's across regions of the state, right? What are the current needs of Vermonters? All of this, both the quantitative and the qualitative side, needs to feed into kind of strategy, right? That's what all this research is for. It's to create really strategic programs and goals and resources to increase the digital empowerment across the state. And then a third kind of component of this work is kind of long-term planning. So what are the future data collection activities that the state should do to know that they're on track and see that they're making progress, right? How do they kind of keep everything fresh over the period of time that we're working on this so that we are able to iterate and evolve and develop to continue to provide the best support possible. And then this is the last slide on just the high level overview. As I'm sure people are aware, the work that we're doing has to follow certain pieces of NTIA guidance. Two of the important pieces of guidance is that it needs to prioritize 8 covered populations, which are here on the left. 95% of the state is classified as rural, so most of Vermont is considered a covered population of some form or another. And our outreach and research and surveys are designed to unlock and uncover the specific needs and specific challenges across all of these covered populations. And then there are 5 kind of measurable objectives on the right that this all needs to be attentive to: availability and affordability, device availability and affordability, digital literacy, online accessibility, and then also the online safety component, the privacy and cybersecurity. So what does this look like on an individual workstream level? And I've got one slide for each major workstream, and we'll try to go through them in sequence. First workstream is establishing data baselines and goals. And so that's again, we want to understand present state, what is the current digital empowerment landscape, and we want to use as much data that's already available as possible. So out of this, we'll kind of establish baselines for what's the situation. We're working collaboratively with Brittany and Yuji to figure out what the key performance indicators are we want to be tracking over time. How do we prove what's working and set long and short-term goals based off of that. So, what we're doing to support this work stream is we're bringing in new state and federal data sets relevant to the digital empowerment work. Again, we've been recommending the KPIs, working on those together. We're also helping to support, kind of putting all the pieces together by incorporating the data we have available with the NTIA objectives and the state goals. And so, all of those have to kind of fit together in a cohesive framework. And then a really important part of this is what data do we still not have and therefore need to go collect on our own. So following on what I just ended with is what data do we still not have that we need to collect, right? There's definitely gaps in the publicly available data. And so we're going to fill those gaps again with a statewide survey. Now, if it's possible to use like American Community Survey or census data, we turn there first because that's collected regularly, free of charge to us, and that data has a vast scale to it. That means that its margin of errors are pretty small, and surveys can't reach that margin of error, which is why we don't know who wins the presidency, even though there's tons of polls that are that are out there until the vote actually happens. But we're going to do our best to do as most thorough and statistically significant a statewide survey is as possible. And so we're doing this via cell phones and landlines. We're going to provide an online version. The online version is going to be translated to Spanish as well. And so the survey will focus on the questions and the data we need to collect that aren't available publicly. Another piece to the puzzle, and I touched on this briefly before, is we're doing a landscape analysis or a literature review, if you will, on emerging digital equity best practices. There's obviously been a lot of emphasis and thought put into digital equity over the past couple of years, especially coming out of the pandemic when the digital divide was laid bare even more than it had been before. And so we're just making sure that that we are staying attentive to all of the emerging research that's happening across the country about what works, how to design really effective programs that address all the different legs of the stool, and also how to create programs that work for the specific covered populations and communities that we know we want to focus on and make sure have all the resources they need to be a full digital participant. So in addition to all of that, we know that there's a lot of great work happening around the state, and digital empowerment initiatives really work best and frankly can't work without local partners doing the difficult work and serving their communities. And so part of this work, the VCBB has at one point created a asset inventory of who are the practitioners in every corner of the state. We are working to refresh that, to keep it current, and to make sure that we can use that to identify are there any gaps in terms of programs that the research has shown to be effective that haven't been started yet in the state, so that the state can understand where to put resources and who to work with in order to have a full coverage of digital equity programming across the state. So and I think the other piece to this is we also want to celebrate the good work that's happening with some case studies about what's going on and what's effective, and just make sure those learnings are being shared everywhere they need to be shared. So at this point, I've lost track of how many legs the stool has, but let's just say a fifth leg to the stool here is interviews with experts and community groups. Even the data nerds that Drew was referring to understand the limitations of data, right? You have to pair data with on-the-ground experience to create the most effective, holistic understanding of what's going on. And so as part of this, we are going to interview experts and community groups. And I guess I should have said to start that, our contract with the state is split into work that we can do without interviewing human subjects and work that we have to have some additional approvals to interview human subjects. It's called the IRB, Institutional Review Board approval. So we have not started this yet, which is why you haven't heard from us. We haven't been reaching out to set up interviews, but you will soon, as soon as we have that approval. But the purpose of this is obviously to just understand what everyone's seeing on the ground, what specific barriers people have identified in their communities, what's working, go deeper into the needs of covered populations. So we have a whole range of interviews and focus groups we want to be doing as soon as we can get that IRB approval squared away. Another component to this is we are working with the state and their GIS vendor to design a digital equity data dashboard. And I'm just checking the chat. And the data dashboard is meant to just ensure visibility across the digital equity needs, gaps, and resources across the state. Part of it will be internal. It'll support the state in their tracking of progress and the KPIs and data so that they can be continually monitoring what's going on and their progress. And then there is likely going to be a public-facing component of this to just help Vermonters understand where the state's priorities are, better access support for practitioners to use to understand what the gaps are in their communities and to understand kind of the VCBB initiatives. So again, this is not yet been designed, and so all the functionality, all the data sets have not been identified yet, but we will be doing this work later this year and working with Stone Environmental, who helps the VCBB with GIS work to get something really good and really rigorous up onto the web. And I should have said at the very start, Brittany and Yuji, please jump in if you want to add anything or if I've missed anything. Because that's okay, great. So that was kind of a deep dive on the specific work streams, just to make sure that everyone who has any questions has a chance to ask. A pause here real quick before I go on and talk about the timeline we're working on. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Hearing none. Again, this timeline is kind of pending our approval to work on human subject related yet we have drafted survey questions and we're working on that, but we certainly will not be allowed to actually do the survey until we have that approval. Oh yeah, Matthew.
I have a quick question. Where do you see the federal communication involved in this? The FCC. Where do you see that to play a role in this? Because they do control most of that. Ain't just the federal. You talk about federal sides, not just the NASJA. We also gotta understand that the FCC is there too as well. So because they have also our data that we're sending to them, vice versa, they're sending it back to us. How do they play a role in this too as well? Not just the NASJA, but the FCC too as well, because they play a bigger role in some of this, moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple ways that I think it makes sense to answer that. So for one, we are looking at all different sources of federal data that could be useful in illuminating the needs across the state. The FCC has data that we anticipate, at least at this point in time, we want to use to inform that. Specifically, the FCC has data about what providers provide internet service in what locations. And so when we're doing an evaluation of where do people have access to not only the internet and broadband, but where do they have access to affordable programs, which vary provider to provider, we're going to be using the FCC data to come up with that evaluation. The other aspects, I mean, obviously they are taken as the source of truth, for better or worse. They're taken as a source of truth for broadband coverage and therefore where grants for building infrastructure actually go. So that isn't, that's mainly in the domain of Brittany and Yuji's colleagues, but it is obviously relevant to some of the NTIA's goals that I mentioned earlier of making sure that broadband is available and accessible to everyone. And the FCC is the kind of arbiter of that data. The state did go through a process where they were inviting people to challenge that data where it was wrong. But I don't think any state has gotten it perfect, but Vermont certainly did provide a lot of effort in terms of trying to make sure it was as correct as possible. I don't know if Brittany or Yuji has anything else to add. This specific project falls under the purview of a sister agency, if you will, to the FCC, which is called the NTIA, National Telecommunications and Information Administration. It's, the fact that broadband falls under or broadband programs are present in at least 5, if not more, different federal agencies speaks to kind of a fractured landscape we're working in. But the NTIA is the agency that is dictating the rules for this particular work. So we're also working closely with it's a program officer, a federal program officer that is representing the NTIA and collaborating with the team here. Good question.
Yeah, and I'll say, Alex, you covered it. I was going to mention the NTIA, but and Matthew, if you have any other questions or if you want to take the conversation offline, I'm happy to meet. Thanks.
Great. So we've been starting with some of the data work here, right? Understanding what data is available, what does that data say, what are the key performance indicators that we want to select out of that data to measure our current state and progress. We've also been working on the lit review. Again, these are the pieces that don't involve human subjects. So we've been looking at, what emerging research has happened since the last time the state did a digital equity plan to is there research that's happened since then that's worth including in our, overview and understanding of what's working out there in the digital equity landscape. Again, we're working on the survey questions. Can't roll that out until we get approval. And also have started work on the asset inventory. So just taking what was created before and seeing, who's doing what across the state, what programs and services are out there, who are they meant for, what's the service area, what types of support do these resources provide. Next, happening, I guess, in May, if we can get the approval in time, we will definitely want to start doing interviews and focus groups. The dashboard exercise, kind of helping the state design what the public-facing map and version of the data is, will need to flow from after we get the data and KPIs all figured out. So that's kind of a secondary or at least a contingency work stream there. And we're planning on wrapping up in August or September with just a kind of final report and presentation about everything that we've done. And I'm sure we will all get together again between now and then to go over some of this stuff. Any other questions or comments from the team here? Let me just make sure this is my last slide. Yes, it is. Great. Well,
Okay,
Brittany,
unless Brittany wants to jump in here, I'll jump in. I'm Erin Herzog. I'm with the VCBB. For those of you I don't that don't know me, wanted to put out another call for any comments or questions for our team, for Brittany or myself or UG, and also for Alex. We'll take questions or anybody has comments on this. Also wanted to let you know that we are recording, so we'll post this recording in case there's someone who couldn't make the meeting and get this update, as well as the slides. And wanted to also let you know, please reach out anytime, like Brittany said, if a question comes up or anything about what our work, it's all a work in progress. I will put my email in the chat, and I think we're all pretty easy to get a hold of, but I'll put it right there in the chat just in case for any questions or follow-up needed. All right. Well, if there are no other, let me put my email right here just to be sure before we leave. Oh, and there's Brittany too. Oh, that looks like a mess, but you get the idea. Those are both of our emails. Please reach out with any questions after the meeting. We thank you all for being here and for the work you're doing. So thank you very much and have a great day.